I'm Madison, 31 female, and my life has been built on a simple, unspoken rule. I am the responsible one. The one who plans, who saves, who achieves. The one who can be counted on. It was a role I never asked for, but one I played well. Perhaps too well. Because after I funded $12,300 for my sister's baby registry and all her shower costs, she uninvited me with a single text message. The reason? My presence makes people uncomfortable. My mother's advice? Try not to take it the wrong way. For the first time in my life, I took their advice. I didn't take it the wrong way. I took it as the truth, and I acted on it. To understand the cold, quiet clarity that settled over me in that moment, you have to understand the landscape of my family. It's a terrain of carefully constructed narratives, where my younger sister, Jenna, has always been the sun, and I have been a distant, functional planet, useful for my gravitational pull, but never for my warmth. My parents, particularly my mother, Linda, are the tireless astronomers, ensuring everyone's orbit is maintained around Jenna. This dynamic wasn't born overnight. It was built, brick by brick, over 3 decades of quiet concessions and glaringly obvious double standards. I remember when I turned 17. For a full year, I had worked after school and on weekends at a local diner, the scent of grease and coffee clinging to my clothes. I saved every dollar, my bankbook a testament to my discipline. My reward was a 10-year-old sedan, a reliable but thoroughly unimpressive vehicle that I was immensely proud of. My parents had called it a valuable lesson in financial responsibility. 3 years later, Jenna turned 17. There was no diner job, no saved-up dollars. Instead, there was a trip to a dealership and a brand-new compact car with a shiny red bow on the hood waiting in our driveway. My parents had co-signed the loan, assuring her they'd handle the monthly payments as an early graduation gift. When I quietly pointed out the difference in our experiences, my mother had sighed, that familiar, weary sound of a parent burdened by a difficult child. "Madison, your situations are different," she had said. "You've always been so good with money. Jenna needs a little help to get started on the right foot." The help continued. When I was in college, my friends planned a modest spring break trip to Florida. I had the money saved, but I mentioned it to my parents out of courtesy. The lecture I received was swift and sharp. It was a frivolous waste, they argued. I needed to be focused on my studies, on building a future. I was an adult now, and adult choices had consequences. I stayed home, listening to my friends, joyful updates from a beach 1,000 miles away, the sting of their words echoing in my quiet dorm room. 2 years later, Jenna finished her first year at the local community college with a C average. To celebrate, my parents funded a 2-week cultural tour of Europe for her and 2 of her closest friends. When I saw the pictures on social media, Jenna posing in front of the Eiffel Tower, grinning with a gelato in Rome, the old sting returned, sharper this time. I called my mother, my voice tighter than I intended. "It looks like Jenna's having fun," I started. "Oh, she's having the time of her life," my mother gushed. "This is so important for her, to see the world and broaden her horizons." "I wanted to broaden my horizons in Florida," I said, the words tasting petty even as I spoke them. The sigh came, right on cue. "Madison, why do you always have to compare? You were in a demanding 4-year university program. Jenna needed a break. You have to understand, you're just more resilient than she is." Resilient? It was their word for self-sufficient. Their word for being left to my own devices. It was the compliment that was actually a justification for their neglect. The final brick in the wall was laid a few years ago. I had just landed my promotion to senior logistics manager, a job that came with a significant pay raise but also a crushing amount of responsibility. I was working 60-hour weeks, but for the first time, I was truly financially secure. I found a perfect 1-bedroom apartment and, with painstaking effort, scraped together the security deposit and first month's rent. I moved my few belongings in a rented U-Haul with the help of a friend, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment. A year later, Jenna and her boyfriend, Mark, decided to move in together. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Honey," she began in her most cheerful voice, "Jenna and Mark found the cutest little place. We are all so thrilled. There's just one tiny little snag. The deposit is a bit steep. I was thinking, since you're doing so well for yourself, maybe you could help them out, just to get them on their feet." I was speechless. The request was so audacious, so completely blind to the years of disparity, that I couldn't form a sentence. "Mom," I fina. Ellie said, my voice dangerously level. "I had to save for my own deposit. Jenna can do the same." The disappointment in her voice was a physical weight. "Well, I just thought you'd want to help your sister. It's what families do, Madison. They support each other." I didn't offer the money, but the conversation left a scar. It was the moment I fully understood that in my family's eyes, my success wasn't something for me to enjoy. It was a resource for them to deploy. I was no longer just the resilient daughter. I was the family emergency fund. And Jenna was about to have a very big emergency. When Jenna announced she was pregnant, the family's focus, which had always been tilted in her direction, became a laser beam. The news was delivered with happy tears and excited phone calls. For my part, I felt a genuine surge of warmth. I was going to be an aunt. This tiny, unborn person was my niece or nephew, and I wanted nothing but the best for them. I saw the baby as a chance to reset, to build a new, healthier connection with my sister, one that wasn't defined by the ghosts of past slights. I decided, with the full force of my logistical mind, that I would be the best, most supportive sister imaginable. My love language had always been acts of service and provision, a trait my parents had conditioned in me, so I leaned into it. I would show my love in the only way my family had ever seemed to value: financially. Jenna and Mark were living in a small, cramped apartment with a leaky faucet and a view of a brick wall. It was no place to bring a baby home. As it happened, an investment property I'd bought a few years prior, a lovely 2-bedroom condo in a quiet, safe neighborhood, had just become available. The market rent was around $2,200 a month. I sat down with them and made an offer. "You can move in here," I said, handing them a spare key. "Just pay me what you can. How about $800 a month? That will cover the property taxes and the HOA fees. The rest is my gift to you and the baby." Jenna had burst into tears, hugging me so tightly I could barely breathe. "Maddie, you're saving us. You're saving our lives." Mark looked on, his face a mixture of shock and gratitude. My mother called me later that day, her voice thick with emotion. "That was such a wonderful thing to do, honey. I'm so proud of the woman you've become." For a fleeting moment, I felt a glow of appreciation. It felt real. But it didn't stop there. Jenna, who worked part-time as a barista, had no benefits and a meager income. Mark's job at a warehouse was steady but didn't pay much. When they started looking at the costs of having a baby, the panic set in. The top-of-the-line car seat Jenna wanted was $400. The dream stroller was over $1,000. The crib, the changing table, the endless list of necessities, it was overwhelming. That's when the baby shower came up. Jenna wanted a beautiful, perfect day. Her vision, fueled by social media, involved a chic, rented event space, catered food, elaborate floral decorations, and a guest list of 50 people. It was a fantasy that their bank account could never support. "I just don't know how we'll do it," she lamented to me over the phone, her voice cracking. "Maybe we should just cancel it." This was my moment. "Don't you dare cancel it," I said firmly. "This is a celebration. You deserve it. Let me handle it. Consider it my gift to you and the baby." I took over the planning like a military campaign. I secured the venue, a beautiful sunlit loft space downtown. I booked a well-regarded caterer, choosing a menu of elegant finger foods and desserts. I hired a florist. I designed and sent out the invitations myself. As the costs mounted, I didn't flinch. I just paid. Then came the registry. Jenna, with the help of her friends, had created a list that was less about needs and more about luxury brands. I knew she'd be lucky if her friends bought a tenth of what was on there. So, I created a separate account, a private gift fund. I told her to put everything she truly wanted on the registry, no matter how expensive. "Don't worry about the price," I told her. "Just pick what's best for the baby. I'll make sure it's covered." Over the next few weeks, I transferred money into that fund. $3,000 for the initial big-ticket items. Another $2,000 for the nursery furniture. More for the mountain of clothes, monitors, and miscellaneous gear. I also paid the deposits for the venue and catering. In total, between the shower expenses and the registry fund, my contribution clocked in at a staggering $12,300. On top of that, to help them with their monthly bills, I'd kept Jenna on my family car insurance plan, a premium policy whose cost I mostly absorbed. Jenna's gratitude was effusive. She called me every day, bubbling with excitement about the decorations or a new item she'd added to the list. "This is going to be the most amazing day ever, and it's all because of you, Maddie," she would say. I allowed myself to believe it. I thought that the sheer scale of my generosity had finally leveled the playing field, that I had finally purchased my ticket into the inner circle of my family's affection. I was not just the responsible one anymore. I was the hero of the story, the fairy godmother. I had provided the condo, the insurance, the party, and a fully stocked nursery. I had built a fortress of financial support around my sister. I believed, naively, that this fortress would also protect me. The day before the shower was a blur of last-minute logistics. I spent my lunch break on the phone with the caterer, confirming the final headcount and delivery time. I sent a final check-in email to the venue manager. I even picked up a small, personal gift, a beautifully illustrated collection of classic fairy tales that I planned to give Jenna separately from the mountain of registry items. I imagined reading those stories to my niece or nephew one day, a quiet moment shared between aunt and child. I felt a deep, humming sense of contentment. Everything was perfect. Everything was in its place. I was sitting on my couch that evening, scrolling through pictures of the floral arrangements on my phone, when it buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Jenna. I smiled, expecting another excited exclamation or a last-minute question. The words on the screen felt like a physical blow. They were simple, concise, and utterly devastating. "Hey, so this is super awkward, but a few of my friends feel like you being at the shower tomorrow would make things uncomfortable. It's just, our lives are so different. I think it would be best if you didn't come. I'll tell everyone you weren't feeling well." I read the message once, then twice, then a third time. The letters seemed to rearrange themselves, to warp and twist. It felt like a prank, a cruel joke that I wasn't in on. My presence makes people uncomfortable. My mind raced, trying to find a logical anchor in a sea of emotional chaos. What people? What friends? What did "our lives are so different" even mean? Did it mean my life, the one that was currently funding hers, was the problem? My first instinct was denial, followed by a surge of white-hot anger. But beneath it all was a deep, familiar ache. It was the ache of the 17-year-old watching her sister get a new car, the ache of the college student looking at vacation photos from 1,000 miles away. It was the ache of being deemed resilient. My fingers trembled as I dialed my mother's number. She would fix this. She would be outraged. She would call Jenna and demand an explanation. Mom always wanted to keep the peace, and this was a declaration of war. She answered on the second ring, her voice light and cheerful. "Hi, honey, are you excited for tomorrow?" Tears were welling in my eyes, hot and sharp. "Mom," I choked out, "Jenna just uninvited me to the shower." I told her what the text said. I expected shouting, or at least a gasp of shock. Instead, there was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. It was a silence I knew all too well. It was the silence of calculation, the silence before the sigh. And then it came. "Oh, honey," she began, her voice dripping with a practiced, placating sympathy. "I know it sounds bad." "Bad," I repeated, my voice rising. "Mom, it's horrible. After everything I've done, I paid for this entire event. How could she do this?" "Now, let's not get hysterical," she said, her tone shifting from sympathy to gentle admonishment. "Jenna is just hormonal and stressed. You know how she gets. Her friends can be a little cliquey, and maybe she's feeling insecure. It's her day, Madison. Let's try not to make a big deal out of it. We can celebrate with you another time, just the family." She added the final, crushing blow. Just try not to take it the wrong way. I didn't take it the wrong way. I took it for exactly what it was. This wasn't about hormonal imbalances or insecure friends. This was about me. My mother wasn't defending me, she was managing me. She was asking me, the ever-resilient daughter, to absorb one more blow for the sake of Jenna's comfort. To swallow the insult, the humiliation, and the profound disrespect, all to maintain the fragile family peace. She was asking me to pay for the party, and then disappear so that the guests of honor wouldn't have to be uncomfortable. In that moment, something inside me broke, but it wasn't a messy, emotional shatter. It was a clean, quiet snap. The years of accumulated hurt, of being the family's dependable appliance, suddenly coalesced into a single, diamond-hard point of clarity. My mother's words, meant to soothe, had instead cauterized the wound. They didn't see me as a sister or a daughter. They saw me as a function, a provider, a resource, a walking, talking bank account that was suddenly, inconveniently, attached to a person they didn't want around. "Okay, Mom," I said, my voice eerily calm. The tears had stopped. "Ed, I understand completely. You're right, it's her day." "Oh, good," my mother said, relief flooding her voice. "I knew you'd be the bigger person. This is for the best, you'll see." "Yes," I said, looking around my quiet, empty apartment. "I think it is." I hung up the phone. I was no longer the bigger person. I was no longer the resilient one. I was just done. I sat in the silence of my living room for a full hour, the glow of my phone casting long shadows on the wall. The emotional hurricane that had ripped through me was gone, and in its place was a profound and unsettling calm. It was the same feeling I got at work when a major supply chain collapsed and panic was spreading through the team. While everyone else was shouting, my mind would go quiet, searching for the key nodes, the critical points of failure, the most efficient path forward. My entire life, my family had been a critical point of failure. My relationship with them was, I now saw with perfect clarity, a series of transactions. I provided money, stability, and solutions. In return, I received conditional affection and the privilege of being in their lives, a privilege that had just been summarily revoked. The contract had been breached by them. A logistics manager doesn't get angry when a contract is breached. They simply execute the contingency clauses. My mind, trained to see systems and processes, began to map out the network of support I had built around Jenna. It was a complex web with multiple nodes of dependency, and I had administrative access to every single one. Action Item 1, the gift fund and shower services. My laptop was already open. I navigated to my online banking portal. The largest transaction, the $12,300, was scheduled as a transfer to Jenna's account, timed to go through at 8 a.m. the next morning so she could pay the final balances and purchase the remaining registry items. My finger hovered over the Cancel Transfer button for only a second. I clicked it. A small, green checkmark appeared on the screen. Your scheduled transfer has been canceled. It was the most satisfying checkmark I had ever seen. Next, I pulled up my file on the baby shower. I had the contracts for the venue and the caterer. I had paid the initial deposits, but the much larger final payments were due on the day of the event, with my credit card on file for authorization. I called the 24-hour customer service line for my credit card company. "Hi," I said, my voice cool and professional. "I need to place a block on 2 specific upcoming charges from 2 vendors." I gave them the names of the loft space and the catering company. "I am revoking my authorization for any and all payments to these businesses, effective immediately." The agent was efficient and asked no questions. My final call for this action item was to the florist. I had paid her in full already. I considered it a sunk cost. Let Jenna have her flowers. Let her have one beautiful thing to look at when her perfect day fell apart. Action Item 2, the shared insurance. Next on the list was the car insurance. I had my policy documents saved in a secure cloud drive. I found the number for my insurance agent's after-hours line. A sleepy-sounding agent answered. "Hello, you've reached the after-hours support line. How can I help you?" Hello, I said, my voice crisp. My name is Madison, last name. Policy number 74B921X. I need to make an immediate change to my policy. I need to remove a vehicle and a driver from my plan. Okay, ma'am, I can help with that. Which driver are you removing? Jenna, last name. And the vehicles. I read him the make, model, and VIN of the car my parents had so proudly helped her buy years ago. The removal needs to be effective immediately, please, I added. Yes, ma'am. The change will be processed within the hour. Your new, lower premium will be reflected on your next statement. Is there anything else? No, I said. That's all. That was one of the most significant monthly subsidies I provided her. Another node disconnected. Action item 3, the subsidized lease. This was the biggest one. The condo. I wasn't a monster. I wouldn't throw a pregnant woman out on the street tomorrow. But the terms of our arrangement were over. I opened a word processor and began to type. I used a standard legal template to ensure everything was above board. It was a formal notice of lease termination. It stated that due to a change in circumstances, the current month-to-month tenancy agreement would be terminated. It gave them the legally required 30 days notice to vacate the premises. Furthermore, it stated that the rent for the final month would not be the subsidized $800 they were used to, but the full market rate of $2,200, as stipulated in the original agreement they had signed, which clearly noted the subsidy was a discretionary, revocable gift. I attached a PDF of the signed lease agreement with the relevant clause highlighted. I looked at the finished document. It was cold, impersonal, and legally ironclad. It was perfect. I saved the email as a draft. I addressed it to both Jenna and Mark. In the subject line, I wrote, "Formal notice regarding the property at 125 Willow Creek Lane." I then used the schedule send feature in my email client. I set it to be sent at precisely 7:00 a.m. the following morning. I closed my laptop. It was done. In the space of an hour, I had systematically and cleanly dismantled the financial scaffolding that held up my sister's life. I hadn't yelled, I hadn't cried, I hadn't pleaded. I had simply logged in, made a few calls, and clicked a few buttons. I hadn't acted out of rage. I had acted out of respect. Respect for Jenna's clearly stated wish that I not be a part of her life. I was merely ensuring my financial presence didn't linger where my physical presence was no longer welcome. I went to bed, and for the first time in a long time, slept soundly. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter than I had in years. The usual weight of familial obligation, a burden I had carried for so long I'd forgotten it was there, was gone. I walked to my kitchen, the sun streaming through the window, and made myself a cup of coffee. I sat at my small dining table, savoring the taste, the quiet of my apartment, the feeling of absolute and total independence. At 7:00 a.m., I imagined my scheduled email landing in Jenna's inbox. I pictured her waking up, still basking in the glow of her impending perfect day, checking her phone, and seeing that cold, formal subject line. I took another sip of my coffee. At 7:15 a.m., my phone, which had been silent on the table, lit up. It was a text from Jenna. "What is this email? A joke?" I read it and didn't respond. I knew the sequence of events that would follow. The email about the condo was the first domino. It was shocking, but the consequences were a month away. She wouldn't feel the true panic until the other shoes dropped. At 7:32 a.m., the second text arrived. "Maddie, what did you do? The gift fund is empty. The caterer just called me screaming about a final payment. The venue too, call me right now." I could feel her panic through the screen. Her perfect day, the one I was not welcome at, was unraveling. The caterer and venue manager, unable to get their authorized payments, would have gone straight to the person whose name was on the booking, Jenna. My phone immediately began to ring. Her name flashed on the screen. I pressed the silence button and set the phone face down on the table. It buzzed again almost immediately. A call from my mother. I silenced that one, too. A flurry of texts followed. From Jenna, answer your phone. You are ruining my baby shower. From Mom, Madison, call me this instant. Jenna is hysterical. Whatever you're doing, you need to stop it right now. This is not funny. I continued to drink my coffee. I knew the final domino had yet to fall, the insurance cancellation. That one would be delivered by the state, a formal notice, but she might not even know until she tried to do something, like drive her car. Her car that she would need to drive to her baby shower. Her baby shower that was currently falling apart. At 8:10 a.m., a new text from Jenna confirmed my suspicion. It was in all caps, a digital scream of disbelief and fury. My car insurance is canceled. I just got an alert from the DMV. Are you insane? I have to drive today. I can't drive without insurance. What is wrong with you? That was it. That was the trifecta. No money, no party, no transport. The entire ecosystem of support had been shut down. The silence from my end was my only reply. I knew what was coming next. Texts and phone calls were insufficient for this level of fury. They would need a face-to-face confrontation. They would need to come to me. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug in the sink, and went to get dressed. I chose a simple, comfortable outfit. I felt no need to dress up or put on armor. I felt calm, centered, and in complete control. I sat on my couch with a book, waiting. It didn't take long. At 8:45 a.m., a frantic, pounding rhythm echoed through my apartment. It wasn't a knock. It was a desperate, angry banging on my front door. I looked through the peephole. There they were. Jenna, her face red and blotchy, streaked with tears of rage. And my mother, Linda, standing beside her, her face a mask of cold fury, her hand protectively on Jenna's arm. They looked like a storm that had just made landfall. The storm I had been weathering my entire life was finally, literally, at my door. I took one last, deep breath. I smoothed my shirt. I walked to the door, a small, serene smile touching my lips. It wasn't a smile of malice or of triumph. It was the smile of a woman who was finally, completely free. I turned the deadbolt and opened the door. The moment the door opened, the torrent was unleashed. You, Jenna shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. Her face was a mess of running mascara and raw emotion. You ruined everything. You did this just to hurt me, my one perfect day, and you destroyed it. My mother stepped forward, her voice low and seething with a protective maternal rage I had never once seen directed in my defense. Madison, how could you be so cruel, so vindictive? After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay us. By terrorizing your pregnant sister, you are a selfish, jealous child. The words, which once would have pierced me to the core, now felt like pebbles thrown against a fortress wall. After everything we have done for you. The audacity of that statement was breathtaking. I let them vent, their accusations and insults washing over me. I stood calmly in the doorway, my neutral smile unwavering. I let the storm break, waiting for the eye. When Jenna finally paused to take a ragged breath and my mother stopped to glare at me, I finally spoke. My voice was quiet, calm, and carried no trace of the anger they were so desperately trying to provoke. I haven't ruined anything, I said softly. What are you talking about? My mother snapped. The caterer canceled, the venue is demanding money, and Jenna's gift fund is gone. You pulled every last cent. That's true, I did. I agreed easily. Jenna let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. Why would you do that to me? I looked directly at her, my placid smile still in place. I held her gaze until her frantic, angry eyes finally met mine. This was the moment from the end of the title, the announcement I had been waiting to make. I'm not being cruel at all, Jenna, I began, my tone gentle, as if explaining something to a child. I'm just respecting your wishes. They both stared at me confused. My wishes, Jenna stammered. Yes, I nodded. You sent me a text message yesterday. You told me that my presence makes people uncomfortable. You said it would be best if I didn't come to your shower. I paused, letting the words hang in the air between us. I thought about that for a long time, I continued. And I realized you were right. If my physical presence is uncomfortable for you and your friends, then it must be deeply hypocritical and even more uncomfortable for you to be surrounded by my financial presence. I couldn't imagine how awkward it would be, sitting in a room that I paid for, eating food that I bought, and opening gifts that I funded, all while knowing the person who provided it all was deemed too uncomfortable to be there herself. My mother's face went from anger to disbelief. Jenna's jaw was slack. So, I concluded, my smile becoming a little brighter, I decided to do you a favor. I respectfully removed myself from the equation, all of myself. The money for the shower, the gift fund for the registry, the subsidy for your car insurance, and of course, the deeply discounted lease on my condo. I'm just making sure that absolutely nothing about me can possibly make you or your friends feel uncomfortable ever again. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for, a life completely free of my presence. The silence that followed was more profound than their shouting had been. It was a silence filled with the dawning, horrifying realization of consequences. They had seen me as an ATM, and they had just been informed, in the politest way possible, that the machine was permanently out of service. For a full 30 seconds, neither of them moved. They were statues of shock, their minds frantically trying to process the calm, logical dismantling of their world. Jenna was the first to break. The anger drained out of her, replaced by a desperate, childish panic. "No," she whispered. "No, you can't do that. The lease. You can't kick us out. I'm pregnant." My mother found her voice next, recovering from the initial shock and shifting to a different tactic, moral outrage and bargaining. "Madison, this has gone far enough. This isn't fair. A 30-day notice? That's heartless. Your sister needs stability right now. You are her family." "I was her family yesterday when you told me to swallow my hurt and stay home," I replied, my voice still even. "You can't have it both ways. You can't treat me like a stranger when it's convenient and family when you need something. That's not how relationships work." "This," I said, gesturing vaguely at the space between us, "was a transaction, and the terms of the transaction are no longer agreeable to me. The 30-day notice is legal, it is binding, and it is final." "But the money," Jenna cried, her voice escalating back into a wail. "What about the shower? What about the baby's crib? You promised." "A promise is part of a relationship," I said simply. "You ended the relationship with that text message. All I did was balance the books. You wanted me gone. Congratulations, you've succeeded." I looked from my sister's tear-streaked face to my mother's pale, furious one. For the first time, I didn't see people I needed to please. I saw two people who had fundamentally misunderstood my worth and who were now facing the price of that miscalculation. There was nothing left to say. "My decision is final," I stated. "I'd appreciate it if you would leave now. You have a lot to figure out today, and I have my own day to enjoy." With that, I slowly and deliberately closed the door, shutting out their sputtering protests and the beginning of a fresh round of tears. I turned the deadbolt, the solid click echoing in the sudden quiet of my apartment. It was the sound of a door closing on my past. The rest of the day was a cacophony of digital noise. My phone buzzed with calls and texts from my father, from aunts, from cousins. Some were furious, calling me a monster. Others were more cautious, wanting my side of the story. I ignored them all. I put my phone on airplane mode, made myself a pot of tea, and finished the book I was reading. The peace was glorious. In the weeks that followed, the full consequences of my actions played out. Jenna and Mark scrambled, moving into a tiny apartment they could barely afford. The fallout from the canceled shower created a rift between her and the very friends whose comfort she had been so concerned about. My mother tried to rally the family against me, painting me as a cold, vindictive villain. But her narrative was dented by one inconvenient fact that a few of the more practical family members pointed out. I had been provoked in a truly cruel way. I grieved. I grieved for the sister I wished I had, for the mother I deserved, for the family I saw in holiday movies but never in my own home. But underneath the grief, there was a foundation of unshakable peace. I had lost a family, but I had gained myself. My life became my own. The money I had been pouring into my family's endless needs, I now invested in my own future. The emotional energy I had spent managing their feelings, I now devoted to my own well-being. I was no longer Madison, the resilient daughter, the family ATM. I was just Madison, and it was more than enough. So I have to ask you, the audience, was I wrong to draw such a hard line? When generosity is met with disrespect, at what point does standing up for yourself stop being revenge and start being an act of self-preservation? I chose to protect myself, and while it was the hardest thing I've ever done, I've never once regretted it. I finally understand that you can't set yourself on fire to keep others warm, especially when they're the ones holding the matches.